All right. We are live. All right, so you guys read the headline. If you want to know what's going on, why? I'm leaving Africa, moving back to the United States. And if I'm moving back for good, then of course, this is the video for you. Can hear me, give me a thumbs up. Let me know that you can hear me. And let me know where you're watching from. This is a major update today. We got a lot to talk about. And it's one of those interesting ones. It's a different one. I'm not sure everybody was prepared for it, but it's time to have that discussion. So we're having that conversation right now. I am leaving. I'm not going to delay it at all. I'm letting you guys know I'm leaving the continent of Africa. I'm leaving this Saturday. Right now, this is Monday, April 22nd. I will be out of here on the 27th. So just to be very clear, I am moving away from the continent of Africa. I just want to take some time to log into IG on another device. So give me a second here so that I can pull it up. For some reason, I can't seem to find my Instagram. Here it is. Let me go live there, and so we can give the update on Instagram as well. Because I hadn't previously announced this. I did say there was going to be some major updates today. So we're going to have those major updates right now. At the time is now. So Admin Bentley says, say what? What? Also, I'm saying, yes, I'm leaving the continent of Africa. Those of you who are watching on Instagram, welcome to the Instagram Live. And if you're watching the replay, welcome to the replay. As you may have heard, I am moving back to the United States. I am leaving Africa. That is correct. I am leaving the continent of Africa. After almost exactly 1 year to the day, I think we're about 5 days away from being 1 year to the day that I moved to Sierra Leone. I will be moving to the United States and leaving Sierra Leone. I know it might be shocking to some of you. There's probably going to be lots of questions. And I'm definitely happy to answer your questions. Royal Bloodline says, I think you're moving back temporarily. They say hello. They're watching from Dallas. Emery Harding is watching from London as usual. You can hear me nice. Those of you who might be on Instagram, let me see. Can you guys hear me? Let me know that you guys can hear me. I'm moving back. I see Jasmine. What's up, Jasmine? Long time no speak. I'm moving back to the United States. I will no longer be living on the continent of Africa. There's a lot to talk about, and we're going to talk about it today. So for those of you who are watching and who are interested, that is the topic of today's discussion. I also have to go live on my personal Instagram page, Authentic African. That Instagram page, for whatever reason, is not allowing me to go live. There are a lot of things to discuss. As I said, I just want to give some time for people to join so that people aren't jumping in and asking me the question, what's this live about? Can you tell us what this live is about? Because that's what happens every time. So we're going to give a couple minutes, but let's see where you guys watching from. Give me a thumbs up. Let me know that you can hear me, and let me know where you are watching from. Phoenix Indigo says, y'all know it's temporary. Joe be trolling us with the dramatics. Okay. Royal Bloodline says, what prompted the move? I wish I was trolling. I mean, look, yeah, I guess you could say it's temporary. Temporary in terms of years, though. I mean, we're not talking about temporary like I'm moving back for 6 months. You know, it is going to be, you know, a multi-year project. I'll be moving back to the United States. So I just want to be clear that I am moving back for sure. Like, my country of residence will be the United States. Of course, I'll be visiting Sierra Leone often. I'll be visiting Nigeria, Ghana. I'll be going to Kenya later this year. I will still be coming to the continent, but I am moving. My permanent my permanent residence will be back in New York City, where it all began many years ago. And those of you who are watching my original YouTube channel, the Joe Hatagwa YouTube channel, you might remember that apartment that I lived in. I'll be moving back into that apartment. As of June 15th, it'll be the 20-year anniversary of moving into that apartment. So it's only fitting that I move back. I'm also turning 40 this year. So there are many different milestones happening all at once. But yeah, frustrations for sure with being here. And that is not necessarily the main cause of the move. But I do want to mention that it definitely contributed to the move. The best way that I can put it is the advice that I have been giving you all when I told you before you move to the continent of Africa, make sure you have these things in place. I also said, don't move to Africa unless you have these certain things in place. I've gone live before and said, here are the reasons to move to the continent of Africa. Now, for me, I moved without any proper guidance or knowledge of my specific circumstances at the time of the move. I was able to obtain a job fairly quickly, within 3 months. I was working at a multinational publicly traded company, unicorn even, in Ghana, head of advertising for Ghana. And so it definitely was a great move to learn. And then I worked for a US-based company based in Ghana. And, it was all good. I moved here last year, after I parted ways with that company. And, I started focusing on building a business here in Sierra Leone. We started with, continuing with the social media, building out my social media agency, building out some consulting, and working to build a business to help people make the move. Excuse me. And, I can still help people with those things because I lived here for just about 4 years. I lived in 2 countries, specifically Ghana and Sierra Leone. I visited Nigeria, Gambia, Egypt. And, so I've lived in some places. I've visited some places. I have a network of folks in many countries around the continent. And so I've gained a wealth of experience and a wealth of knowledge. However, what I can tell you is living in Sierra Leone as an entrepreneur, building a business in Sierra Leone, like any business, it takes a very long time. But you have things working against you when building a business in Sierra Leone. As I've mentioned to many people before, one of the things you have working against you is the size of the population. Your total addressable market, TAM, as some people call it. Any people in that world of venture capital or startup fundraising, you understand that the term total addressable market. The entire country is maximum 8 million people, maybe 8.5. Then, of course, the average income is $50 a month. So now that further shrinks your total addressable market, right? Who can actually benefit from your services? Now, for myself, as somebody who does business to business, the businesses I'm doing business with, helping them grow their social media, they haven't determined the value of social media to them. And so what they're willing to pay is also a very small amount. And so all of those things make it very difficult to scale a business in Sierra Leone, considering you also have to take into consideration all of the non-traditional business expenses that you have to take into account, right? And so, we've talked about this before. You have power, you have light issues, you have issues with clients not being able to spend or pay as much as you need to run a sustainable business. So you do have to have outside income to help support that business. And so all those bits of knowledge that I was giving to folks was because I am and have been experiencing that in real time. Living here on the continent of Africa has been the greatest decision that I've ever made. It's been the greatest experience that I've ever had. but it's also been the hardest decision I've ever made, and also the most difficult experience I have ever had. So it is it kind of is both ends of the spectrum, both extremes. And I've watched as many different people from all walks of life move to the continent of Africa and leave the continent of Africa. I've seen people do it, going to francophone countries, right? People from France moving to francophone related countries, francophone countries meaning countries that speak French. I knew someone who went to Senegal. I've known people who've gone to the Cote d'Ivoire and moved back to France. I've met people who have moved to Ghana and moved back to Europe or to the United States. And what I have discovered and what I have learned with the expenses that I have, with the responsibility that I have, and with the overall plans that I have to scale this business, build this platform, that cannot be done on the income that is being generated here in Sierra Leone. Potentially, it could have been done on the income generated in Nigeria, potentially, but we're talking about starting a business from scratch here on the continent. And I don't do the salacious things, right? I don't engage in some of the things online that help people go viral in a way that would allow my platform to grow exponentially at a speed that is, faster than the general growth that you can expect, right? So especially the paid platforms, the platforms that pay you to participate on those platforms with, giving a piece of the revenue from advertising. So, as I evaluated things, this decision has been a long time coming. I've been thinking about this since right around the day my laptop crashed, to be honest. I think the day my laptop crashed in October, and actually prior to that, there had been some other family things going on. And something happened that I haven't spoken about here on this platform, and maybe I'll speak about it later. But when that happened, that had a profound impact on my life and on my family's life, and specifically some people around me. And it required some expenditures that were not easily obtained to make things happen. And when that happened, I thought, okay, this is a reminder that I need to have a certain level of disposable income to be able to solve big challenges that you will find here. Subsequently, my laptop crashed. And the reason why it crashed was because I was putting off certain things that I could have put in place that would have mitigated some of these issues, like having solar, like having step-down converters or transformers, like having multiple 4+ terabyte external hard drives, having high-speed fiber internet at home. These are all things that I looked at as not necessities, but things that I'll decide to get later as I work on the things that are most important. Making sure that I put a roof over this building, making sure that the windows are stable, making sure that we work to break ground on the new property, getting the plumbing set up and the electricity set up and all these different things that I prioritized ahead of things that go around the business, which ended up causing major setbacks in business. And so you had personal things, you had professional things that were all being put off because I wasn't generating the level of income necessary to be able to just kind of swipe it on a card and just take care of all of it. I decided when I moved to the continent that I wasn't going to take on any new debt. In the first year, I took on a little bit of debt, and I said, you know what? I'm going to pay back that debt. I'm not taking on any new debt. So especially in 2021, so for all of, or was it 2022? Sorry. In 2022, I decided I was going to cover all my debt. I wasn't going to take on any more debt. And so there are no credit cards. So everything I said is going to be paid in cash. I'm not taking out any new credit cards. I'm going to pay it in cash. And if I can't, then I need to make some serious decisions and make some changes. And so, so that leads up to October of 2023. A tragic family event happens. Laptop crashes. And then fast forward to March of 2024, and another major family event happens, and it requires more expenditures, and understanding that there's so many other things happening, and all of these things, it just kind of was like a culmination of all these things that tells you, all right, you need to change some things in order to be able to help more within these situations. You know, I'm unmarried, no kids, which allows me to be able to move around and make decisions on my own without having to confer with people. But there are times where you're going to be expected to step in and help out more than you might be able to, or might even be willing to, at specific times. And you know, being on the continent, you are going to run into challenges with expenses. So I'm going to run through some questions here before I give you guys some more details about, you know, why I'm leaving and when I'm leaving. But I want to stop there because I've been talking a lot. I've seen a number of new people join, and I see a lot of comments. So let's get into it. So Phoenix Indigo is saying, okay, so Phoenix Indigo thinks that this was trolling. Cash says, hi, Joe, watching from Texas. Can't wait to hear what you have to say this live. It's a lot going on, yes. Dan Diablo's in the building. Awele says, hit the like button, everyone. Ufuomo Okoro says, listening from the UK. Shout out to you. Hopefully I pronounced your name right. Working on my my pronunciation of some of the West African names. I've been working on the Nigerian names, especially those Yoruba names. You Yoruba people, man, your names are difficult. Okay, so a couple of different things. I'm just going to give you numbers to help put things in the perspective for you all, okay? Now, these are numbers based on previous things. These are not numbers based on right now. I don't talk about current income, but just to give you some numbers. So I started a social media agency back in 2019. I might have mentioned this to you all before. I was living in Los Angeles at the time. My first client was a lawyer who lived and I lived in a luxury building at the time. My first client was a lawyer who lived in that building. It just so happened that a friend of mine who I had met knew him from, you know, she had been partying in Los Angeles. He was one of these people who like to go out and buy bottles. And she was one of those people who like to go party and be at those tables, right? And so she introduces me to this gentleman. He owned a cannabis dispensary. Cannabis had just been legalized recreationally. And so I decided I wanted to start a social media agency targeting cannabis consumers online. He had a record label that he started separately, and he wanted to focus on this artist. So that immediately after that first meeting, he immediately deposited $2,000 into my account to run social media for him and his record label for one artist. If that went well, after 90 days, we were going to add a second artist for another $2,000 per month, just to be clear on the numbers, right? Because generally that's what you should charge to run a social media agency. I had just bought a course for a little over $1,000, taken that course, put it into effect, ran my own ads for myself, had an e-commerce store do about $10,000 in revenue over 4 months. And so I was rolling. I'm just like, all right, this is working. I'm moving forward with this agency. I'm pitching these kinds of businesses. Slight detour with this record label. Now you fast forward to being here in Sierra Leone. Now, by the way, let's take that back. Because I was getting paid $2,000, I myself was working on strategy, and then I had a person who was working for me who was managing the post, and then I had hired other folks to do graphic design and other things because you know, with $2,000, you know, with 1,000 of that, you can pay off everyone and still keep $1,000 per month. Now let's fast forward to being in Sierra Leone. I pitched 3 clients through one connection, and they were only able to afford $500 a month each for only 3 months max. So 3 clients, $500 each. That is if you guys are doing the math, that is $1,500 versus the $2,000 per month. Now, I'm not saying that I expected to get paid $2,000 per month per client in Sierra Leone. That is just unreasonable. Makes absolutely no sense to expect that. However, the fact that I still had to hire folks who charge $250 or more per month means that I'm only taking home at that point in time $250 per client, right? That is just to get people to manage the posting, right? Because I had folks that I was hiring. Separately from that, I have a $30 a month fee for one of the platforms I was using to help me post. And I have other fees associated with the business. So all in all, I'm actually spending $300 to almost $400 a month overall for my expenditures. Actually, let's say, sorry, for the 3 clients, I was spending close to $800 a month. And so 1,500 minus 800 is $700 per month for 3 clients in terms of take-home revenue. And in fact, it was less than that. As a matter of fact, I'm not counting all of the expenditures that I have. But as you can imagine, with razor-thin margins, it's very difficult to scale a business that way. If you want to have someone do additional work like commenting on 3 to 5 posts a day, adding new followers, doing research, all of that was going to be additional cost. And so you have very demanding clients with very small budgets and very high expectations. So you can imagine the amount of stress that I have on me consulting with running that advertising agency, the social media agency, going live every week to talk to you all, doing everything that goes that's involved with that. Of course, also going on trips and having deliverables for those folks, and then all the personal things that I can't really talk about on this live because it's it doesn't just involve me, and it's family related stuff. So I don't really talk about that unless people would like to talk about it in detail, and I'm just not going to do that. So if you can imagine all of those things, but I will still come on live and just try to give you guys game, help you guys understand what it can be like to live here under the circumstances in which I told you do not move here under those circumstances, because I personally lived it. I made that mistake without having any knowledge. I mean, that's why I was presenting that knowledge to you all. So I hope that makes sense. And so you can understand, if you have razor thin margins like that, yes, I have savings. Yes, I have other sources of income. But you ideally don't want to go into savings. Ideally, you don't want the other source of income that I have outside of Sierra Leone started drying up. It becomes very difficult. You guys have seen me when I'm live, how choppy it can be. The light goes out. Imagine I'm dealing with clients that are in the West. They're expecting to be able to have conversations where I don't constantly get kicked off the live, or my battery life goes out, the light goes out behind me. All of these things that happen that reduce the confidence that people have in my ability to do the work that I pitched them on being able to do. Also, the longer that I was away from the United States, the more it was weakening the relationships I had with prospective clients that I will be getting for my consulting clients, right? Because big part of what I would pitch is, look, I spent 4 years working at Hulu, and prior to that, I spent another 10 years in programmatic advertising. I have relationships, but these people move on to different companies. They move out of the industry. We lose ties. I don't see people often. When I was living activity. So when I was living in the States, I would see people at events all the time. Living in New York or living in LA, you have monthly events. But then outside of that, I would travel to San Francisco for Programmatic IO or New York for Programmatic IO. There's, there were different events that I would go to, Ad Tech, Ad Week, upfronts. These are different events where you see people constantly. You communicate with them in person. You develop these relationships. You're able to utilize those relationships to now bring them on as clients for a consulting client that I had. And it was just kind of a relationship that building process that I had done over that time. The longer I was on the continent of Africa, the more people saw this content, the more they saw me as distant from that industry. That industry pays really well, really, really well. And so I was starting to lose some of those clients. I lost my biggest client last year. And so with that happening, that changes the dynamic of what it's like to live on the continent. So you remember I've said to you all, if you're deciding to move, make sure you have an income stream that's a residual income stream that can go on in perpetuity regardless of where you are in the world. The reason why I would always say that is because I thought that I was going to continue to expand those relationships, even though I wasn't even going to the United States. I went twice in 2022 for a month at a time, each time. I also went to France to an event, but it was kind of reintroducing myself to many people. There were many folks that I did not know, so building new relationships. And then, of course, it became more distant because I wasn't seeing them back home in New York or in LA or in San Francisco. And so, again, it just continued to reduce the amount of consulting clients that I had. So let me take a quick water break. So let's answer some questions that people have, because there are some questions and I do want to answer some of these before I move on. Elijah says, were the family issues here in Sierra Leone or back in America? Combination of both. Combination of both. Auntie Alice, always supporting, appreciate you. Said your biggest fan is watching, appreciate that. Just saw Auntie Alice a couple of weeks ago. I did have to take an emergency trip to the United States, as I mentioned to you guys before. Didn't discuss why, and I won't. But that has a lot to do with this, right? Well, a portion to do with this. I mean, I kind of been making this decision before that emergency trip had to be made. So Cash says, will I pause the building of the property? I will not, actually. I have a company that I'm working with that I have a lot of faith in their capabilities based on the house that I stayed in Ghana and what I know that they can do, some of the other properties and some of the other work that they're doing. They're one of two companies that I was looking at that was a major construction company here that have skills to do exactly what it is that I need them to do. And so, based on what I've been able to witness with some friends of mine when I was in Ghana, the house that I stayed in, the one that you guys, that was the bedroom that I was in that you guys said looked like a jail cell, which was hilarious. That was a kind of a man cave, I guess you could call it, for the son of a friend of mine. And so that space was deliberately built that way, where it's kind of a studio, which didn't need to have too many amenities in it because the main house was, as they say, a stone's throw away. Just kind of a quick walk over. So I got a couple people saying they're watching from the UK, a couple people watching from Texas. So Euphoma Okoro says, you can still make a contribution from the diaspora. Absolutely, and I plan to, and we'll talk about that in a moment. As more people are joining, because obviously this is a big discussion, is a big announcement. The channel is called Authentic African. So I think it's confusing to a lot of folks, especially those of you who started following based on the YouTube channel, not based on Instagram. I want to be clear. Authentic African as a platform started long before I ever thought I was going to move to the continent of Africa. I started Authentic African on Instagram in January of 2019. Now, I had planned to visit Ghana because I had just come back from Sierra Leone, and we were saying, we're going to go to Ghana this year. And it just so happened to be the year of return. So in January in January of 2019, we started looking into tickets, me and a group of friends, and I think about 9 of us went together. And so I knew later that year I was going to be traveling to Ghana. I didn't know that after I traveled, it was going to lead to me deciding to move at the end of 2020. In any case, yes, so the Authentic African platform will continue. That is not changing. How we make content on YouTube may shift slightly, but not that much. The vlogs are still coming about the house building process. That still has to come along, right? There's still a lot to do there. What my life has been like moving into this house, I still haven't put those out. Many interviews that I have to do with people. And I'll be coming back frequently to give you guys updates on different things and my experience living here and continuing to build my business, because I still have the social media agency. I still have the consulting business, still have things that I'm doing. I just need to now work on scaling it. So shout out to Auntie Alice for the compliment. I appreciate it. She said, "You're so good at this." Thank you. This is practice. I practice going live. I've gone live over 80 or 90 times, probably over 100 times at this point. And so I've, practice doesn't make perfect, but practice that makes better. Perfect practice makes perfect. And you can never be perfect, so you can only get better. Anyway, so, yeah. So where was I? So I kind of gave you, to answer those questions about whether or not Authentic African is shutting down. It is not. We are not shutting down the platform. In fact, it's growing and it's going to continue to grow. Many more partnerships to come. As you guys have seen, we partner with African Stream. We go live with them weekly to talk about things that are happening on the continent weekly. My co-host, Inem Richardson, who lives in Burkina Faso, has been a wealth of knowledge that she shares with the folks and really helps everyone understand from African Stream's perspective, the stories that are happening on the continent. I've also partnered with Sierra Leoneans Killing It to go live to talk about things that are happening in Sierra Leone, whether it's topical or newsworthy, or it's specific topics that have to do with, let's say, FGM, dating, all kinds of other things. These are topics that we'll continue to have. That's not changing. And then this live will probably shift and change just a bit. There will be times where we'll talk about things that are happening in Sierra Leone as I talk to people on the ground. There'll be times where we take a human interest story that's happening and we do a deep dive into it. Much like, shout out to this brother, Mark Lamont Hill. I've been following a lot of his content recently. I like what he's doing. And so there'll be a lot of that. We'll be talking about stories in the diaspora as well. I'll continue to interview people on this platform when we go live as well. I'll be interviewing Sierra Leoneans that live here in Sierra Leone, Sierra Leoneans that live in the diaspora that travel back, often people who have moved. I will continue to keep this live going. This is not changing. So the 3 lives that we have weekly are going to continue. There is no plan to stop them. Content will maybe change slightly, but it's not going to change to a point where you won't see the vlogs. You haven't seen a vlog from me in a while because there's been some overwhelming things happening thus far. And so what I could commit to is going live, because going live doesn't require any edits. Because I edited along with 2 other editors or 3 other editors that I've worked with previously, which cost. I don't know if you guys remember, but at one point in time, I was spending $1,000 per month on YouTube specifically, right? Editing videos, social media managers, folks that were helping to contribute to the consistency of the platform. And thanks to them, we've grown that platform in just over 3 years to 14,000 subscribers. On average, it usually takes 4 years to get to 10,000 subscribers. So I really do thank you guys for helping us get there. From Instagram, obviously we're talking about, we're going on, what is this? This is 5 years on Instagram. We're approaching 300,000 followers on Instagram. So, thanks to all of you guys who've really been supporting the platform. On Facebook, we have over 50,000 followers. So, you guys have done a really good job of supporting it, getting the word out to other folks. But some things do have to change for me in terms of my physical location. And so we talked a little bit about personal. We talked a little bit about financial. So let's talk about, let's kind of drill down a little bit more into the financial aspect. So again, social media agency, social media, consulting, these were all ways that I was generating income, consulting outside of the continent, consulting on the continent. To be very clear, I was a very, very high income earner in the United States. Very high. However, I did not know how to deploy that capital on the continent of Africa. I was in the process of kind of moving up the corporate ladder, increasing my income. I think I've mentioned this to you all before. I went from one job to the next where I had a $20,000 pay increase in my base salary. Then with another additional $20,000 increase in terms of my commission and bonuses from one job to the next. Then within that next job, my base salary increased 40,000 and then an additional 10,000. And then with the next job, I went up another 10,000 and then earned another 60,000 on top of that. So you can imagine, without telling you where we started from, it doesn't even matter where we started from. You can imagine these are pretty significant amounts, right? And so I was spending that cash a little bit frivolously, I can say. I mean, I bought land in Sierra Leone, the land that I'm living on, right? I purchased it with another family member. And of course, I also purchased property in Washington State. And so it wasn't as if all was wasted, but I was living in $3,500 a month apartments. And I just, I was spending money on experiences, right? My goal was to have new experiences. So, we go to Big Bear as a group of friends. I decide I'm taking, a room by myself downstairs. Everybody else, you guys can do 2 in a room. I said I'm too old to do 2 in a room. I didn't want to have roommates. So I wasn't having roommates. So wherever I lived or whatever trips I went on, we went to Vegas for a friend's birthday. We stayed at pretty expensive places. I traveled a lot. I, helped out with different family related things from time to time. And so, I did not know how to deploy that capital in Africa. And so, unfortunately, I just did the one thing I knew how to do, which was buy some land, right? And I didn't even buy as much as I could have because I was limited in my information and my knowledge. And when I decided to move, obviously, I gave up that income. And so that changed it. So now, being on the continent, I do, of course, out-earn the average income of people living on the continent, but that doesn't say much because people are paid so poorly on the continent. Really, so yes, I out-earn most people who live on the continent, yes. Even with my own businesses, talking about what some clients were paying and some of the consulting I was doing outside of the States, even though that was dwindling down and losing my biggest client. Now, moving back to the States, upon saying I'm moving back to the States, within 1 month, I have now just signed a contract with one client. I've already talked about the amount of income that basically far surpasses any income I made on the continent. One consulting client, one. Not to mention any full-time offers, any full-time jobs. I'm in the interview process right now, but with one consulting client, I am now earning multiple months income with one consulting client in the former career that I was in, programmatic and connected TV. So that just gives you kind of an understanding, right, of the income that I can generate. So now I know how to deploy that capital when it comes to renting apartments so that I can do Airbnb, when it comes to transportation business that I had talked about before, when it comes to the merch business, when it comes to import and export, all these different businesses that I wanted to eventually get into. I'm not going to jump right into all of them, right? Because you can't do anything well if you're doing all of them at the same time. But I can start with one, continue to pour money into that, and then I can invest with other people who I know can actually operate those businesses, and I can just do weekly discussions to give consulting, right? The same way I consult businesses that give me a percentage of their income or pay me a monthly retainer to consult them, which is what I had been doing. I can now do that with an investment, right? I invest in the business, give them money, but then also they can give me monthly payments back, and I can also be consulting those businesses. And so now I have the knowledge and the network to be able to scale residual income here on the continent. So let me pause right there, because that was the finances. We were kind of going into career, which was going to be the third thing. But first, let me get to some of the comments, because there are lots. So, there's a lot here. Okay, so Life Minds says, my brother, you're doing so well hanging out in Sierra Leone, because personally I can't cope with Sierra Leone right now, as it is right now. Oh, you're doing so well hanging out in Sierra Leone, because personally he can't cope with Sierra Leone as it is right now. It's challenging for sure. It's definitely challenging. But honestly, if not for some of these other things that require just a substantial amount more income, I actually would have stayed. Like, if it was up to me, I can grind it out. You know, I lived through the financial crisis where my net worth was negative $70,000, right? So I've lived that life before, so I can grind it out, eating peanut butter sandwiches, eating rice, making sure I get my vegetables and fruits in the morning. I have no problem with that. I just have other things that require my attention and finances, and so that means that I have to earn a significant amount more. And because I can, I should, right? Because I can go back to the United States and immediately get back to that, and so I have to now. But I built a significant network. This platform has been built being on the continent, and so I thank all of you guys for really helping me build it and continuing to help it grow. So Liz Z says, how long do you anticipate being stateside? Good question. So this is a great question, and this is really going to be based on really how much I can generate and the amount of time that it requires to do some of the things that need to be done. We're working on building a house. I'm not going to talk about how much specifically it's going to cost, but it's going to be upwards of $50,000, right, for just the first floor. It cost me $30,000 plus to do everything we've done just to get this 2-bedroom, 2-bathroom. So obviously, you can imagine the first floor with some other excavations, with some fixing of the fence and all these other things are going to cost upwards of 50. And it's all cash, ladies and gentlemen, all cash. So I need to make that cash. And, I can go back and look, I'm not the only person contributing to these expenses, but the other people contributing shouldn't have to, and I had been helping them more previously. And by moving to the continent, I had reduced my amount that I can impact. And so now it's time for me to get back to that. Royal Bloodline says, you are so graceful and positive. I appreciate that. So Lizzie, just to answer your question about being stateside. So one of the other things that I'm considering, I'll come back to this. Actually, I'll make that the last point, because I think that's an important one, but I'll make it the last point. But don't worry, Lizzie, I'll come back to you. So Phoenix Indigo said, okay, so you're not trolling today. I appreciate your transparency. I've been following you a couple of years and love the conversation and tips. Well, of course, I appreciate you tuning in for so long. I remember, Phoenix Indigo, the first time I think I saw you comment on a live, that was probably back in 2022. And so I appreciate you being on for so long and continuously coming back. And many of you I've met in person, which has always been interesting to hear how these lives have helped you all. And you guys have helped me, It's really, really hard to stay consistent doing what it is that I do. But you guys give me energy, because I was tired. Trust me, I was tired today, very tired. And I've already done 2 lives today. This is my 3rd one. And it's past 9:48 p.m. here locally. And I still got some work to do tonight. So I do appreciate you guys all really tuning in and really helping to keep this thing going. So Jerry Johnson says, just tuned in. Did you say you're leaving Africa? Why? What did I miss? Why are you going? Jerry, lots to unpack there, but I would say if you get a chance, I would watch the replay and you'll catch most of it. But I will do a little bit of a recap. Income generated on the continent versus income that can be generated back in the States. 1, personal issues, family issues that I haven't really discussed in detail on the continent. 2, career and business require just more finances poured into them, and the other businesses that I want to start, and it just requires me going back and generating more income. Loveline Outreach Ministries says, I understand everything you're saying. I am building now in South Africa, purchased 10 acres of land. Although the continent is cheap in some aspects, you have to have cash flow, and significant cash flow, I would add to that, for sure. Liz Z says, I'm getting the impression that YouTube is, sorry, I realized that a lot of stuff just happened. That YouTube is not what it used to be. The goal posts keep moving and the money has gotten funny. I mean, sure, I guess you could say so. You know, my YouTube channel was demonetized a while back. I've been working to try to get it back. My Instagram page has had some changes to it as well, limited some of the capabilities that I have. That's also why I have to make some of these other decisions so that I can pour into this network that I built with these platforms and adjust for ensuring that I can continue these platforms or continue sharing this information with you all, regardless of what happens. If these channels and these platforms go away today, I have to build it over again from scratch. And I started with a hefty budget, paying folks to kind of help me keep things going, and I'd have to do the same again. And so, yeah, so that's the thing. So Kathy Hardney says, please don't go. Right? No, don't do it. Stay in Africa. I have to go. Kathy Hardney says, don't leave, but I gotta go. Liz Z says he has to secure the bag, as the kids say. I do. The bag must be secure. Life Mind says, I salute, respect you, bro. Auntie Alice, I keep saying Auntie Alice, so I don't want to call her Alice Davis. She is my aunt. I appreciate your transparency. Of course. Liz Z says, once you complete your home and get other income sources up and running, you can return feeling more secure. Absolutely. Elijah Wade says, is there a few things you hope to see change upon your return to Sierra Leone? A lot of things I'd like to see change, but I'm not unrealistic about timelines and so I can only control what I can control. So what I'd like to see change is I have multiple income streams when I return, so I can have basically the money that I make in country is the money I spend in country. Many people that I know generate their money elsewhere and then spend that money here locally. In fact, about half of the people that I know here who have come and moved here from the diaspora have income streams outside of here and use that to build things here, and they're working to build their income streams. I have a couple of people who I look up to in terms of their decisions to slowly move back and how they're slowly transitioning to move back to the continent. And as I watch what they're doing, I'm thinking to myself, okay, this is what I'm going to do. Take a little bit from them, take a little bit from them, figure out how I can make that work for me and apply it to what I'm doing here. So Ufuomo says, so you're going to consult from a position of strength. Your moves is more of a strategic adjustment, which will end up benefiting all, 100%. How do you feel about going back to the U.S. after living on the continent? Well, that's going to be interesting. That's a great question. So going back to being a minority is not exciting to me. I'm not going to lie to you. I remember in the previous position I had at a job, I had mentioned, and look, let me be very clear about this too. I grew up, in fact, the way I speak is because I grew up around white people, right? Caucasians. And so I have nothing inherently wrong with, I have no issues with white people, with Caucasians, anything of that nature, right? No issues with people in general, with any particular group of people. But I know that a lot of people who are in these spaces have a lot of negative things to say about other groups. That is just not me, because my experience is different from most. It just is. Now, are there specific people who have ill intent, specific people that I have issues with? Yes. But I'm also more forgiving, and I also have a broader worldview than most people might have. But what I will say is it is empowering to be somewhere, especially in an office environment, where all of your management has knowledge that you don't have, but it's not just knowledge within the industry and the business that you're in, but knowledge culturally of the world that you're in, that you want to know more about. I found myself soaking up information so much more from so many different people while working here on the continent. Where I was in the United States, I soaked up some things like how to work in a corporate environment. I learned how to navigate that space because it didn't come naturally to me. I had to learn how to navigate the idea of, you know, going to happy hours and pretending that you like hanging out with these coworkers and, you know, inviting them to your house parties and things like that to kind of build these relationships. I would do some things like that. Even though I didn't necessarily have this affinity for those particular individuals, I knew that it was important to help me succeed in that space. And so I did learn a lot from those folks in that way. But I really was, I learned so much more, exponentially more, working here on the continent. So I am going to miss that. I am going to miss the being a majority. I am, in the spaces that I'm in. Dan Diablo says, hey, Joe, I thought Babylon was burning. So they say it is. I'm just going to a fireproof room, I guess. If I'm going to keep the metaphor going, or a fireproof area of Babylon, I guess. If that's the metaphor we're going with. So Diallo 224. Is that Nigeria? Okay. Just to live, you should aim for $2,000 a month residual income. If you want to do business, you need more money. Boom. Well said. Yah says, well done, Joe. We need to normalize returning if needed with the goal of coming back to the continent. We do. So here's the thing. I will tell you this. When I first got here, somebody asked me, look, will you ever move back? And I was like, no. And I secretly judged people that moved back. I mean, I didn't talk about it on this platform, but I was judging people, and I'd have conversations with friends about it, you know, and because it was seen as a failure, you know. In many ways, you'll notice that about people who live on the continent. When they escape to go to America and have to move back because it ends up being harder than they thought, it's seen as a failure. Or I've had friends who were from smaller cities and who moved to a big city like Los Angeles or New York and then had to move back to their hometowns. They were seen as failures. So in that same way, leaving the West and moving to West Africa and then moving back a lot of times can be seen as failure. And I will tell you, if you do it right, it is, first of all, number one, failing is not a bad thing. Let's just be really clear on that. I know that we talk about normalizing things, but normalizing leaving and normalizing failure is a good thing. Nobody who's ever built anything substantial has not failed along the way. The only people who have failed in life are the people who've given up after a setback, right? And so, because if you just keep going, you will eventually reach your destination. Sometimes it takes people longer than others. The road to reaching your destination is a long and winding one with many speed bumps, hurdles, brick walls, whatever metaphors you want to put in place, all of that. If anybody knows that, it's myself. As I mentioned, I went through the financial crisis as a 25-year-old. I didn't talk to my family about this, so some people are hearing about this for the first time. But, you know, I was on, you know, the whole ramen noodles, Chef Boyardee, $1 things, going to McDonald's. I can't believe I ate McDonald's. But going to McDonald's, buying $1 cheeseburger, $1 small fries, drinking water, because water is free, and getting the cookies someday as a treat to myself. You know, and so that way I could keep my meal under $4 because that's where I was financially at that time when I was 25 years old. So I knew that if I came here and I had to grind a little bit, I had no problem grinding because I've lived in a place where I've gone through that involuntarily. I voluntarily decided to do this. And I did know that if I needed to, I could always go back and come back refreshed and new. Raven C says, hey, Joe, it's good to understand how best to navigate and know which circles to move in and around to get to your goal. It's all about networking. Learn what you need to bring it back home. You live and you learn. Sangbei says, I salute you and on your decisions. Sangbei and Mario, I think is the other name, right? personally can see myself being a seasonal resident on the continent, given many of the issues you have presented and shared. Sengbei says, life has no destination timeline. That is for sure. And Ya agrees with you. Life Mind says, true talk. The road can be rocky, but eventually there's light at the end of the tunnel. Yes, with the mixed metaphors. You're just like me. I mix metaphors all the time. That is the name of the game. So let's talk about it. So there was a question by Liz Z earlier. When do you anticipate moving back? So here's the thing. I learned a long time ago that when I put timelines on things, I am sadly mistaken. I will explain this. I'll put it out there publicly. It's something that I have not fully dove into. I haven't fully explored. How about that? So I'm looking into going back to school to get a master's degree. I know for some people, they think that's not a great idea. Let me explain to you why. If I ever decide I want to come back and work on the continent of Africa, especially in a senior leadership position that is commensurate with my years of experience on the continent and with a pay that is, years of experience in my industry and with a pay that is commensurate, it does require a master's degree, and it will require likely a shift in careers. So if you guys might remember, a big part of the reason why I've been interviewing startup founders and I've been advising startups here on the continent of Africa is because I want to move into startup investing. You see startup investing growing a ton on the continent of Africa. You see unicorns coming out of the continent. You know, these are companies that do $100 million or more. You know, you or value at $100 million. You find that many of the folks hired, many of the folks who are involved in investing have built these networks in B school or business school, getting a graduate degree. So one, the network that I can build from going to a global executive MBA is what I'm looking at in particular. So what is a global executive MBA? This is an MBA that Masters in Business Administration, right? Globally, meaning you get your education from multiple universities, and you also get degrees from multiple universities. And then you'll have these interdisciplinary teams that you're on where you can learn from somebody who's been in the military, somebody who's been in healthcare, someone who's been in finance, someone who's been in marketing or tech or ad tech. So why that finance is so important is because if I want to move into venture capital, finance is really important. So the knowledge and the know-how, some of that which will come from going to B school, the network that I can build, most of which will come from going to B school. And these are high quality individuals, right? These are folks that are global executives, right? And so if I'm looking for a role, let's say in Nigeria, Kenya, South Africa, even here in Sierra Leone, smoother transition because nepotism works at an all-time high here. And also having a master's degree is really, really, really valued very highly here. And so if you think about it, many of the government administrators have multiple degrees. A lot of them are doctors of something. A lot of them have done multiple levels of education beyond just a master's degree. For me, a master's degree is enough. And I'm looking at a few different schools. We won't talk about that as of yet until we get some more traction there and I feel confident that I can have those discussions. But those are the things that I'm looking for. And so that means that I would have to be gone at least 3 years. At least 3 years. My country of residence mostly will have to be the United States. Now we're talking about global executive MBAs. So where I'm starting from is going to be likely in the New York area, okay? And so if that is going to be the case, then I'll have to start from there and travel to some of these places for class. The network that I'll be able to build. Classes to be taken in Dubai, in Nairobi, in France, in Ireland, in the UK, in the US, in Latin America sometimes. I'll have the ability to audit classes across the different universities that I'll have degrees from. So there's a continuing education element to it. And you guys know I've already spent over $70,000 on my own personal education outside of the traditional world of education, you know, the post-secondary institutions. I'm talking about courses that I paid for online. My last $1,000 during the financial crisis when I was 25, broke and destitute, got a $2,000, what do you call it? Tax return. And that 1,000 of that went to paying off some bills and keeping a little bit of it. Another 1,000 went to buying a course. That course led me to starting a LinkedIn page back in 2010. That LinkedIn page led me to getting a consulting gig. And so I immediately saw the impact of paying for my education, immediately applying what I learned, and then how it had a direct result on my income. And so once that happened, I continued to spend as much money as possible. I don't care if there was, I took out a personal loan, which is something else I had to pay back, a $25,000 to pay for an e-commerce course where I didn't learn anything from that e-commerce course or that trip to Vegas, except I saw one person on stage who I reached out personally, who I paid personally $15,000 to his direct pocket to teach me how to build an e-commerce store. And so these are the things that I was willing to do, which most people aren't, but these were things that I was willing to do during that time. So now it's time for me to do it in a traditional sense so that it'll allow me to come back to the continent with a lot more leverage, right? So again, moving careers into venture capital. You know, I have a peer mentor who I mentioned to you all was a big reason why I moved to the continent in the first place. Now, he was working for the Carlyle Group, doing really well for himself, and he told them, if you want me to stay with you guys, I want to move to Lagos. He moved to Lagos. He met some very, very impactful people. He's the reason why I got the job at Jumia, because he met someone who was working at Jumia. He also met some people who run Maven Records, which is the record label that Ira Star and Rema are on. If you guys are familiar with these artists in Afro beats, introduced me to her as well. She's a Sierra Leonean. And so he had a great network. But he came in already in the world of finance, already on that side, on the buy side, you know, basically deploying capital to startups and businesses, multi-billion-dollar transactions, and all these different things that he's doing. Sierra Leonean, by the way, and younger than I am, on the board of my boarding school that I went to. So this guy really is a high-performing individual. And so when he said do something, I'm like, I'm doing it. And he was like, you know, if you want to make this transition, you need to move to the continent. I also consulted with him back in October, and he said, listen, the same thing y'all had mentioned. Listen, if it makes sense, you got to move back. You have to move back. You know, don't feel like you have to stay just because you told everybody you're moving to Africa. You know, it's not a failure. It's just a pivot. You know, you have to reposition things. You have to restructure how you're doing things, because now I can move back with the knowledge and insight I gained while being here and the insight I give to you all. And so I can continue to be someone that you guys can come to for one-on-one consulting, for your social media, for moving to the continent, for many different things that you guys might need. I still have that information and that knowledge because I made the move. So that was the fourth point to answer Liz Z's question around how long. So at the very least, I need to prep myself. At this very moment, they are in the process of taking applications for many of the universities that I've been looking at. They also have the next session, which I may not be able to get in time. So I may not be able to start until end of 2024 or early 2025. And if that's the case, then it's still till 2027 before I'd finish that. Now, that doesn't mean I have to finish it before I leave to come back to the continent, depending on where things are at that point in time. But I'm giving myself at least 3 years over there to kind of work to build some things up, to work to finish this house, work on other investment properties, income streams before I come back here and I have a residence in each country that I want to go to. My goal is to have a residence in the following countries: Kenya, Nigeria, Ghana, Sierra Leone, South Africa. And there's some honorable mentions. We'll see if I visit them more and I feel that way. But there are other countries in which I'd like to have a residence in. Those residences are going to be generating income from me when I am not there. So I will be Airbnb, short-term leases, short-term rentals, hotels tonight, booking.com. As you can imagine, I've taken some courses on this, so I have some understanding of some of the other things that I can do. And so these are things that I will be doing so that it'll allow me to move around to these different countries, spend a month here, spend a month there, continue to build my network, continue to expand my real estate portfolio. There's two different ways I want to get into real estate on the continent of Africa. One is renting a house and doing short-term rentals, just making sure that I earn a profit, scaling that. The other is buying land in those countries. But these are the things that I'm thinking about doing, right? And these are the things that I will continue to do. But in order to do that, I need to have the startup capital. And where do I get that startup capital? Back in the US of A. All right, a couple different comments before we move on to the last element here. So Life Mind says, true talk, the road can be rocky, but eventually there's light at the end of the tunnel. You said it. Oh, actually, sorry, he said that. I read that before. Apologies. Layla says, living in Sierra Leone is expensive, even if you don't live in the high life. I can't see myself going back to the Western world because of racism and Islamophobia, but I'm thinking about moving. Well, yeah, I mean, look, you have to do what makes the most sense for you and your current situation and your ability to earn, right? That's always going to be a number one decision maker. And all the things that I've talked about. I've done lives where I said, don't move to Africa unless you do these things. Definitely check that out if you're ever wondering if you should move. Layla also said the MBA is a good idea. So yeah, folks. So, I mean, that really answers it. I want to see if there's anything on Instagram. Sorry, I haven't gone back to the folks at Instagram as of yet. Oh, there's a couple people here. So DJ Tony C says, not Joe putting his coworkers on blast. Yeah, well, I'm looking forward to coming back, Tony. Dame, so Sybil Dame or Dame Sybil says, sorry to see you go. Why did you come to Sierra Leone in the first place? Network, and there were different things that I wanted to do here. You know, this is my heritage. Both my parents were born in Sierra Leone. I was buying land. I knew that I needed to build a network here. By the nature of the fact that it's such a small country, it gave me the opportunity to meet government officials. I have specific people's numbers in my phone. I've been told by my friends not to mention whose numbers I have in my phone, so I won't say that. But I do have government officials' numbers, and I can call specific ones. I've met with different ones about different ideas that I have and pitch them on business and things of that nature. And so, you know, that was a big part of it, right? The idea was to come here, try to begin to make a difference, start to build a business, and to ensure that I have a future here. Now, I needed to be here for an extended period of time because there's so much that I learned being here on the ground that I would not have learned coming back and forth and visiting. There's just no way. And, you know, to really feel the pain of what it's like to not have light for multiple days on end, a week on end, that gives a whole nother perspective for ensuring that that doesn't happen again later on down the line. So I kind of just needed this experience living here. And the crazy thing is, I landed in Sierra Leone on the 27th of April, 26th of April, 2023. And I'm leaving Sierra Leone on the 27th of April, 2024. You couldn't have written it any better. I'm moving back into an apartment that I got put on the lease of, and I'm still on the lease for, that I moved in 2004. So literally this will be the 20th year. I am turning 40 this year. And so many different things are all converging and happening at once. It just feels right that this is the time to kind of make this shift and make this pivot so that I can come back with a lot more insight and information. All right, what else do we got? Are there any more questions and comments? All right, so Elijah Wade says, can you make a video advising people on steps they can take to get into the consultancy industry? Sure, I could do that. I think the number one thing I can say here, just free game real quick, is if you have information that other people don't have, then you can consult them on it, right? As long as you know enough about it that you can actually help them make a decision and successfully achieve the thing that it is. I recommend you have done it, or you partner with people who've done the thing that you're consulting on, just to ensure that you're not leading people down the wrong path. Mo Roberts says, bro, I like to chat with you when you get back to the States. All right, sounds good. Hit me up. You got my email, so shoot me a message. We'll definitely talk, Mo, for sure. All right, guys, so we're an hour and 10 minutes. It's been a long day. We've exhausted the topic. We've talked about why I'm leaving. I've answered your questions. It's kind of a crazy one, I know. And, you know, all of you who've been along for this journey, right? Some of you were there when I was in Nigeria when I went live and that whole situation went down. You guys have been there for a major breakup in my life. You know, that was interesting. You guys have been there for the start of the YouTube channel. I mean, this whole journey that I'm on with YouTube started because I moved to the continent of Africa. I moved to Ghana. A friend of mine, my boy Kels, who you can see that video, the 10 things you should know before moving to Ghana. He said to me, "You talk a lot. You should definitely start a YouTube channel." I was like, I don't know if I want to be on camera as much. You know, I like kind of doing the Instagram thing where it's not really about me. And it didn't take much convincing. You know, I watched how he edited some videos. I decided to do this, and now here we are. To Vanessa Canby giving me that advice to say, if nothing else, make sure you go live once a week. And I took that advice. I've been going live every week since then. So shout out to Vanessa Canby for that advice. Someone who helped me get my channel off the ground and going by an interview that she did with me. So, you know, I really appreciated that. Mo Roberts says, I was born in Sierra Leone. To Sierra Leonean parents. I lived in the States for almost 30 years. Okay, nice. Layla says, you're going to miss the independence parties. I am. But I'm doing a going away party. Jerry Campbell says, tapping in from Barbados. I heard somebody call it Barbados recently, which I thought was strange. But shout out to Barbados. My generator just made a really weird noise. That makes me nervous. Because you already know. Tiggy is in the building. Shout out to Tiggy. What's up, Tiggy? Looking forward to catching up with you later this week. Layla says, thank you for helping me with knowledge about the country before I made the move to come here in January 2023. And I'm really happy that it was helpful to you. Many people who've decided to make the move have told me that the insights that they got from this live has really helped. So I've always tried to do things from a perspective of we're going to talk about the good, the bad, and the ugly. You know, we're not going to sugarcoat things. We're not going to, you know, present things in a way that are untrue. You know, we're gonna share what it is to live here and what it's like and why it's important to have the knowledge that I've been trying to share with you all. Mo Roberts says, I want to go home, man, but this video scares me. Don't allow this video to scare you away. I think it should just scare you straight, right? The idea of, you know, thinking, okay, here are all the things I need to think about before I make this decision. Look, I didn't have anyone telling me these specific things because they don't know all of my personal circumstances, right? So the advice that was given to me was based on other people's experiences. And then, of course, I have friends. I have a nonprofit that I'm on the board of, right? And so these folks were encouraging me to move to Sierra Leone as well because, you know, we're all here and we could all be here working on this stuff together. And, you know, and eventually we will be again. But that time is not right now to be here all at the same time in the same place. You know, and it just happens. It's just how things work out. You know, you cannot predict the future. So Jerry Campbell says that Vanessa Canby interview was my introduction to you. Nice. Well, I'm glad that she did that interview because Jerry, you've been a strong supporter since those videos. Mo Roberts says, what will you say is the most important reason you're moving back? I would definitely say you may want to watch this video back if you didn't catch all of it. But one of the most important reasons is, to be frank, is finances, right? I think when it boils down to it, everything else is kind of branches off the idea of finances being the way it should be. So that's me going back to school. That's my career and what career I choose. That's the personal issues and personal things going on in my world that require more finances. That's the businesses that I am building, the businesses I want to invest in, right? All of these things are tied to my own personal finances and my ability to earn. As I mentioned before, I'm a high income earner in the United States. And I say that just to be clear that the hard work that I dedicated to getting to that place took me 10 years. Well, not 10 years. From 2000, that's a lie, sorry. From 2010 to 2015, I went from being worth negative $75,000 to making $75,000 as a severance from a company that I was leaving, right? So in a 5-year span, that was my negative net worth, and then getting that from a severance when I voluntarily left the company, right? And so it took me 5 years to get to that point in America. So you have to anticipate that it will take a significant amount of time and a lot more resources to get to a similar place, not exactly the same, because again, we're dealing with different circumstances, but get to a similar place on the continent of Africa. As you can imagine, it's not easy to go live every week, then to add 2 more lives, then to have all the other things that I do. You do have to be consistent. You do have to apply new knowledge. You do have to work an extraordinary amount to have a little bit above ordinary results. So, obviously, the way I approach this is the way I approached my career, which is why I was able to accelerate so quickly, and the results I was able to generate, and the money I put into my own personal education. The same applies here. My channel has grown faster than most people in the space that I'm in that are, how can I put this? That are mostly just sharing knowledge, right? Because there are people who are going to grow much faster because, these platforms are big on rewarding bad behavior. So, guys that are flashy with money, women that are provocative, let's say, these are the folks that generate the most views on these platforms. And in order to be able to perform better than those folks who are in the realm that I'm in, has obviously taken quite a bit of work. There are behind the scenes stuff that goes on here. You guys have not been able to see. You guys don't see what's going on in here and the time I spend. But I remember my nephew and niece saying that, like, I remember I don't know who got it for them for Christmas. They got like a Play laptop, and I remember them saying, "Look, I'm Uncle Bemba," right, sitting on the laptop, because that's how they know me. It's like I'm attached to my laptop. My mother can attest to this. Everybody knows me. Anybody who knows me is that, like, I'm a cyborg. My laptop is an extension of me. I'm not a person who's in my phone like that unless I'm away from my laptop, but I really am on my laptop more because I can type faster and I can get more done. I'm more productive. I'm actually addicted. I'm addicted to productivity because there's a long list of things that I have to do daily, and I'm trying to get as many of those things done as possible. And so I spend a lot of time on my laptop. And so most people aren't willing to take the amount of time and to do the amount of work that I'm doing, because I do now what others won't, so I can have later what others can't, right? And so it is very hard. It is very, very hard to do all of the things that I'm doing. I don't know if it looks easy to you all. It may, but it's very, very difficult. And But this same approach that I've taken to this, like I said, allowed me to accelerate there. And so that's the reason why I expressed the amount of income I was able to generate there. Is not to try to impress you, but it's really to impress upon you what it required, right? And how I need to operate the same way with the same level of expectations, maybe even longer timelines to be able to develop the same kind of skills and knowledge and to generate the same kind of results here on the continent. All right, now I've been wrapping this thing up for 14 minutes and I'm still talking. There's a couple more comments and questions I want to talk about, and then we'll go. So Sengbe says, new handle, brave, authentic African. Appreciate that. Mo Roberts is saying, I'm married with 2 young kids, and I need to give them the best life possible. That may not be back home. It's tough, man. Yeah, I mean, look, you have to find out what makes the most sense for you and your own personal circumstances. That's why I do the consulting, because it's hard for me to to comment on what anybody's going to decide to do without knowing enough about people watching here. Sorry, needed to rehydrate. But there are definitely some things that I can impart on you if you want to do a consulting session with me, because I have plenty of insight and advice. And by the way, I've been consulting as an income stream since 2019, but the unsolicited consulting and unsolicited advice goes back to 1989. All right, so I've been consulting with people forever. So Jerry Campbell asks another question, or says, and it's because of you that I'm becoming a Sierra Leonean citizen. Wow. You're a hardworking Joe, and it shows. Nothing but respect for you and what you've accomplished. Thank you. I appreciate that, Jerry. I really appreciate that. And I appreciate you. Catherine Smith says, will you keep the channel? Absolutely be keeping the channel. So for those of you who joined late, the channel's not going away. First of all, the Instagram page started in 2019 before there was ever even a thought of moving here. Now, I had just gotten my citizenship with Sierra Leone, had opened a bank account, and started a business. Well, got my business license, which reminds me, that was something I needed to do before I go. Got to do that. Got to get my TIN or my other, whatever you call it here. Anyway, see, there's always something to do. Let me write that down. I need to get that done. Okay. I need to renew some things. So, so the Instagram page started long before I decided to move. And so Authentic African as a brand was already around. And so, and an e-commerce store was already around. And I kind of put that on pause, and I'll be able to start that back up once I go to the States. But some things have been put on pause, but that was already around. So the YouTube channel was new. And so that's, I think, what's interesting to most people. I think most people think that I'm calling myself Authentic African, but the platform is called Authentic African because it's about the authentic African experience. And it looks like my internet connectivity is pretty shoddy right now. So we're going to bring this thing to a close with one last comment, maybe 2 more comments, and then we'll bring this to a close. We're proud. Tiki says, we're proud of you, Joe, doing the Lord's work. Well, I appreciate that. Thank you. Alexi Tillery says this. Are the solar companies taking advantage of the blackout issues? Is there more interest in solar by the government? Good questions. Are the solar companies taking advantage of the blackout issues? Unfortunately, many of them just aren't able to best take advantage of using social media and using platforms to really fully get the message out there and get people to take action. And many of them have decided not to hire my company. And so they missed out on that opportunity. Imagine you as a solar company can come in and say, listen, guys, you've been dealing with a blackout for a week. We have off-the-grid services. We can get you completely off the grid where you never have to deal with a blackout. Blackout where? Maybe you can even show people who have solar in their house, which I've suggested. they've had, anyway, that's a conversation for another time. Is the government's interested for sure. What they're doing about it, that's a conversation we'll have to have another time. Catherine Smith said, thinking about doing like a tour around the USA when you return. People will come out to see you or eat with you. Good point, Catherine. I will likely do in person, but I will likely be doing that with other people. You know, I need some help getting these things set up. If you guys remember the 2 times I was in the States, I wanted to do an in-person in Atlanta, DC, LA, and New York. All of them had to be canceled because I need support getting these things done. So I need to partner with some other folks who have platforms who are on similar topics that we can do them together. But we absolutely will be doing these for sure in person. We'll be doing live shows in person. You better believe it. You better believe it. All right. With that, as always, I want to thank you guys for joining. If you know anybody who's planning to move to Sierra Leone, anybody who has been following the platform, who told you about it, or who you've been telling about it, send this video to them. Make sure that they understand what it requires. Sorry. I'm sure the light has come back. My generator is on. So I would imagine that's probably my house, my caretaker trying to tell me that I should switch over to the new, to the EDSA power. Anyway, share this with anybody that you can and let them know that if they want to make the move, it's definitely viable. They should talk to me first or watch at least some of these videos before they decide to make that move. There are a couple more questions coming in last minute, even though I was bringing this to an end, and you guys know I always answer questions or respond to comments, but these are the last 2, and then we have to go. So if you guys want to do any comments or questions, just join the next live, which is going to be next Monday at 9 p.m. GMT. Jerry Campbell says, let's connect when you get back to the States. Sounds good. Mo Roberts is proud of you, bro. I'm in Florida. Where are you based? Where will you be based? Are you going to finish your home in Sierra Leone? Going to finish the home in Sierra Leone, and we'll be based in New York City. And with that, guys, thanks for watching. I will see you guys all on the next video, and I will be doing this video from Brooklyn, New York, the next time you see me. So with that, see you guys next week from New York.